Mom raised her glass at the Thanksgiving table and smiled like she was giving the most important toast of the evening. She rested her hand on my sister Noemi's shoulder. "Two daughters," she said sweetly, voice warm. "Practiced." People nodded, leaned in slightly. "One is a blessing." More nods. Soft approving sounds from the relatives who were always looking to her for the emotional temperature of the room. Then her eyes slid toward me. She was still smiling when she said it. "And one is a burden." The room froze for half a beat. Forks paused midair, laughter caught in throats. Then a few nervous chuckles leaked out because nobody wanted to be the person who challenged her. My face burned. My stomach dropped in one clean fall. I stared at my plate like it could hold me steady. Mom's smile widened when she saw I wasn't crying, wasn't reacting the way she'd hoped. She thought she'd won something. Under the table, my hands clenched so hard I felt my nails press into my palms. And in that exact moment, something settled inside me like a stone finding the bottom of a river. If I was a burden, I was going to set myself down. Completely. Finally. And let everyone see what the weight had actually been. My name is Vesper Quill. I've been carrying my family like a backpack full of bricks since I was 19 years old. In the bathroom, I gripped the sink, breathed through the sting behind my eyes. Could still hear Mom in the dining room, her voice light and easy telling someone, "You know how Vesper is." Like I was a category of problem, a recurring weather pattern. When I returned to the table, Mom patted my shoulder and whispered close to my ear, "Don't start." Don't start meant don't defend yourself. Don't make this uncomfortable for me by acknowledging what I just did to you. I sat down, nodded like I was fine. My face was calm. My mind was not planning a fight. It was planning something different, something quieter, something that would take longer to build but land in a completely different way. I was planning an exit, not a dramatic one. Not a door-slamming, voice-raised, give-them-a-scene exit that she could retell as proof of everything she'd ever said about me. A real exit. The kind that built a life somewhere else. The kind she couldn't follow me into. And the kind that started, quietly, tonight. The next day, Mom called at 9 in the morning. Tired voice. The specific, exhausted tone she used when she wanted me to feel responsible for whatever was about to be asked. "I need you to come over," she said. "Your grandfather's paperwork arrived and I can't make sense of it." Can't make sense of it meant she hadn't tried to make sense of it, meant she'd set it aside and waited for me to arrive and make it sensible. I went. Because I loved my grandfather. That part had never changed. While I sorted through the documents at her kitchen table, Mom sat on the couch scrolling her phone. She looked up once. "Noemi offered to come help," she said casually, "but she's so busy lately. Busy." Noemi was busy because Mom protected her from the heavy work, kept her clean and available for the moments that were pleasant, sent me for everything that required effort, inconvenience, or time. I kept sorting papers, kept my expression neutral, but something clarified itself while I worked. Mom didn't call me a burden because I was difficult to love. She called me a burden because I was useful. Useful in the specific way that meant she never had to develop her own capacity to handle the weight. As long as I was there carrying it, she didn't have to. A week after Thanksgiving, Mom called asking for a small loan. "Just until next Friday," she said. "One bill is a little short." I transferred the money. Not because I didn't notice the pattern, because the reflex was still running. The deep-wired instinct to keep things stable, to prevent the crisis that happened when I didn't step in. An hour after the transfer, a photo appeared on her social media. Mom in a new coat, smiling outside what looked like a restaurant. My chest tightened. I didn't comment, didn't send a follow-up message about the bill or the timing or the coat. I screenshot the post, opened a new folder on my phone, saved it inside, not from pettiness, not to build something explosive, but because I was finished letting my own memory be the only evidence of what was real. Memory could be questioned, could be called exaggerated, could be reframed by someone with more confidence and a louder voice. Screenshots had timestamps. Screenshots didn't forget, and I was done being the only person in the room who remembered things accurately. The folder sat on my phone, small, just started, but it was the beginning of something that felt different from anything I'd tried before. Noemi came to my apartment late that same week, She sat on my couch with her knees pulled close, eyes bright in the way that meant she'd been holding something for a while and couldn't hold it anymore. "I'm sorry," she said. What she said at Thanksgiving. She shouldn't have done that. I nodded, throat tight. Noemi looked at her hands. "I get scared," she admitted. "If I push back on anything, she turns it around, makes me feel like I'm the problem suddenly." That sentence landed in my chest like something cold and specific. Because Noemi wasn't wrong. She wasn't naive. She was describing the same mechanism I'd been living inside for years. She'd just been positioned differently inside it. I reached over and squeezed her hand. "You're not as safe as you think," I said quietly. "You're just next." Noemi looked up. "What do you mean?" I chose my words carefully. "Mom needs someone to carry her emotions and her weight," I said. "Right now, that's me. If I stop being available for that role, she's going to need someone to fill it." Noemi went very still. "She'll look for the next closest back," I said softly. Noemi's lip trembled slightly, and I realized something I hadn't seen clearly before. This wasn't just about saving myself. I stopped by Mom's house unexpectedly on a Sunday afternoon. Her front door was slightly open. I could hear her voice before I reached the porch. She was on the phone. Speaker on. Relaxed the way people were when they were sure they were alone. "Vesper's always been like this," she was saying. "Difficult. I've done absolutely everything for that girl." I stopped walking. Done everything. While I was the one sorting her father's paperwork, paying bills she was short on, driving her to appointments she hadn't scheduled far enough ahead for Noemi to rearrange. Then Mom laughed, light and fond. "Noemi is my blessing," she said. "Vesper is—" A pause. "Well, you know how some kids just are." I stepped back from the door quietly, stood in her front yard for a moment. Then I drove home and opened my laptop. Created a spreadsheet, date column, description column, time spent column, money column. Started filling it in from memory, as far back as I could accurately document. Every errand, every transfer, every appointment, every form. Not as revenge, as reality. Because reality needed somewhere to live other than inside me where nobody could see it. Mom called the following Thursday morning. "Can you drive me to my appointment this afternoon?" she asked. I forgot to schedule it far enough ahead. I took one slow breath. "I can't," I said. Silence. The particular silence that meant she was recalibrating, deciding which tool to reach for. "Why not?" she asked, voice still pleasant but tightening at the edges. "I'm working," I said. Mom scoffed. "Noemi would figure out how to make time." I swallowed. "Then ask Noemi," I said. Her voice went cold. "Precise. You're being selfish." Selfish? Her word for unavailable. Her word for the moment I stopped making her convenience my priority. I said I had to go. Ended the call. Sat on my couch afterward with my hands shaking on my knees. Not from guilt. From the specific adrenaline of saying no when everything in my nervous system was wired to say yes. When every trained reflex was screaming that I'd just done something dangerous and needed to fix it immediately. I breathed through the shaking. Let it pass. Because no to someone who had relied on my yes for years felt like stepping off a cliff. But it also felt underneath the fear like air. Like the first real air I'd had in a long time. The texts began arriving the same afternoon. Mom had moved quickly. "My aunt, your mom is really stressed, you should call her." A cousin, family is family. You need to be there for her. Another relative, "I don't know what's going on, but I hope you girls work it out." I sat with my phone and felt the familiar pressure of it. The closing in. The sense that everyone around you had already been briefed on the version of events that made you the problem. I was tempted to explain, to send a long, careful message to each person laying out what had actually been happening, to defend myself properly. Then I stopped, because I'd done that before, multiple times. And every time I explained, Mom reframed. And every reframing made me look more emotional and her look more patient. I replied to each text with the same 4 words. "I'm not available right now." That was all. No explanation, no apology, no additional information for anyone to dissect and misinterpret. Just a quiet, clean limit. Mom hated limits. She preferred bare skin, preferred access, preferred the ability to reach in and find the tender parts and apply pressure when she needed something. Limits were shields, and I was learning to hold mine. Mom appeared at my workplace lobby on a Wednesday morning. I found out from the receptionist who texted me, "There's a woman out here saying she's worried about you." My stomach dropped. I went downstairs, found Mom near the front desk. Arranged expression, eyes glistening, the performance she used when she needed witnesses. She'd told the receptionist she was a worried mother, had sighed and looked fragile until someone acknowledged her. I pulled her aside, outside the glass doors, away from the desk. "You cannot come to my workplace," I said. "Quiet. Femme." Mom's expression shifted immediately. The fragile softened into something harder. "See what you make me do," she whispered. "Make her do." Like she hadn't driven here and staged this. Like I'd somehow compelled her through my absence. "Don't come here again," I said. Mom's eyes narrowed. "So now you're ashamed of your own mother?" "I'm protecting my job," I said. She looked at me for a long moment, then said, very quietly, "The blessing would never treat me like this," and walked to her car. I stood outside the glass doors and understood what she'd just done. She'd come here to punish me in a space I cared about because I'd stopped being punishable in private. That told me everything about what came next. A letter arrived at Mom's house addressed to me. She handed it to me during a brief visit the following week. Face arranged in careful concern. The look she wore when she was managing the reveal of something. "This came for you," she said. "I hope everything's okay." I opened it. Collection notice. For an overdue utility account. At an address I had never lived at. My hands went cold. I looked at the address again. Read it carefully. It was Mom's old apartment, the place she'd lived 3 years ago before she moved. The account was in my name. I kept my voice completely steady. "This isn't mine," I said. Mom shrugged, gentle, almost bored. "It's addressed to you." "At your old address," I said. She tilted her head. "Maybe you forgot something from back then." The sweetness in her voice was her danger voice. I'd learned to recognize it over years of exposure. I folded the letter, put it in my bag, drove home in complete silence. Because the word burden had just taken on a shape I hadn't fully understood until that moment. She hadn't just been calling me a burden emotionally. She had been making me one. On paper, with my name, in ways I hadn't known to look for. I ran my full credit report that evening. My hands were shaking before I finished logging in. Accounts I didn't recognize appeared on the screen. Small ones. Nothing enormous. Exactly small enough that no single item would have triggered an automatic alert. Exactly large enough that together they formed a picture. A utility account, a store card, a phone line. All opened at addresses Mom had lived at. All in my name. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time without moving. Then I called Ozia Venn, the credit counselor whose name I'd found through an online resource for people dealing with financial fraud within families. I explained the situation carefully, told Ozia what I'd found and where the addresses matched. Ozia was calm, professional. "Document everything before you do anything else," Ozia said. "Screenshot every account, get the opening dates, get the addresses. Build your picture completely before you dispute or confront." "Why not confront first?" I asked. "Because the person benefiting from your silence will move the moment they know you're aware," Ozia said. "Document first, dispute cleanly, don't give warning." I thanked Ozia and ended the call. Sat with the spreadsheet open beside the credit report. The burden was shifting, moving off my heart and into evidence. Mom turned her attention to Noemi the following week. Noemi called me on a Tuesday night, voice cracked from crying. "She wants me to tell you to apologize," Noemi said. "She's saying you're hurting the family on purpose." I breathed slowly. "You don't have to carry messages between us." I said. "She keeps calling," Noemi said, "multiple times a day. She cries. She says if you leave the family, it'll destroy her." My eyes burned. Not from sadness exactly, from the recognition of a tactic I'd watched my mother use for years and had somehow hoped she wasn't using on Noemi too. "Her stability isn't your job," I said quietly. Noemi went quiet. "You're not her emotional support system," I continued. "That's not what daughters are for." A long pause. Then Noemi said something that broke something open in me. "She texted me last night," she said. "She said if I keep siding with you, I'll become the burden too." My chest tightened hard. There it was. In writing. Noemi had the text. The system exposed completely. The label was a threat, not a description, a tool for controlling behavior. "Save that text," I said immediately. "Don't delete it." Noemi exhaled, small, shaking. "Okay," she whispered, and I heard something new in her voice. She was waking up, Mom invited everyone to a small dinner 2 weeks later. To clear the air, she said in the group message. All warmth and reasonableness. I went, because staying away would have been framed as proof of everything she'd been saying about me. The table was set nicely. Candles, the effort she put into appearances. Midway through dinner, Mom set her fork down and sighed. Long, meaningful, the sigh that preceded a monologue. I've sacrificed so much in this life, she said, looking around the table, gathering the room. Then her eyes found me. Some children repay everything you give them by becoming burdens. My stomach flipped. I kept my face completely still. I'm not going to discuss this here, I said, quietly, pleasantly. Mom's smile appeared. See? Drama. Drama. Her button. The word she used to reframe my self-preservation as a personality defect. I placed my napkin carefully on the table, stood up, and left. Not quickly, not loudly, no slammed door, no raised voice. I simply stood, walked to the door, opened it, stepped through. The room was completely stunned. Mom's smile flickered because she'd expected a scene, had prepared for a scene, had wanted the scene. She got silence and an empty chair. And silence was the one thing she couldn't reframe. I met with Ozia twice in the following 2 weeks. We went through each fraudulent account methodically, built the dispute documentation carefully, organized everything by date and address so the pattern was impossible to misread. Ozia was thorough, patient, the kind of professional who understood that these situations were never just financial. The emotional component is real, Ozia said during our second meeting. But the credit damage is what you can fix with documentation. I nodded. That week I also made an appointment with my therapist, someone I hadn't seen in over a year. She listened to everything I laid out, didn't interrupt. At the end of the session, she said something that I spent the rest of the drive home sitting with. You've been managing guilt that doesn't belong to you, she said, for so long that you stopped being able to feel the difference between your emotions and hers. The difference between my emotions and hers. I'd been so thoroughly trained to absorb her distress and treat it as my responsibility that I'd lost the boundary between where her feelings ended and mine began. For the first time, I let myself imagine a life where I wasn't bracing for her next mood, where I wasn't living on the edge of her emotional weather. It felt unreal. It also felt necessary. Mom posted on social media that Thursday a long caption, artfully vague, about daughters who abandon their mothers, about sacrifice going unappreciated, about the loneliness of loving someone who refused to be loved back. Comments filled in below it. Heart emojis. People who knew her face from the community center, or her church group, or neighborhood events. You deserve so much better. Sending love. Some people just don't appreciate what they have. My chest tightened when I saw it. The familiar pull to respond, to correct, to post my own version so that the people leaving hearts would know what they were actually endorsing. I closed the app, sent calm, brief messages to the 2 relatives I was closest to. I'm handling some private family matters. I'd appreciate not being contacted about them. Thank you. 2 of them responded with apologies, said they'd been hearing things and hadn't known what to believe. That response told me something important. Mom's control of the narrative was not as complete as she believed it was. When someone outside her immediate performance circle asked a direct question, the story started to look different. Questions were what Mom's version of events couldn't survive, and questions were starting. 16, Mom announced a holiday fundraiser dinner at the community center. She delivered the news like a gift, said she was organizing it for a local cause, said the whole family should come. Said her daughters would be there. Her daughters. Not us. Her daughters. As though we were things she owned. Items she was including in an event she was hosting. Noemi called me after the announcement. I feel sick, she said. She's going to use us as props. I understood exactly what she meant. Mom needed the public setting. Needed the audience of community members and neighbors and distant relatives who didn't know the daily version of her. She needed to be seen as the generous, giving, self-sacrificing mother. And she needed Noemi to be the blessing, and me to be the burden in front of all of them. Needed to name those roles publicly one more time in a room full of witnesses who would confirm her version. Are you going? Noemi asked. I thought about it for a long moment. Yes, I said. Noemi was quiet. Because, I said carefully. She wants to use the stage. And I've realized something about stages. I paused. They amplify everything, not just her version. Mom called me the week before the fundraiser. I need you to cover the catering deposit, she said. Casual. Like this was something I'd already agreed to. My stomach tightened. I breathed once. No, I said. Silence. Then her voice changed, became sharp at the edges. So you want me humiliated in front of the whole community? I want to have a boundary, I said calmly. Mom hissed. You are going to ruin everything. Everything meaning her image. Her carefully constructed performance. The version of herself she showed the community. Not everything. Just the part of everything that depended on me being available to fund and manage and silently support while receiving public blame. I hope the event goes well, I said. Mom's voice turned very cold. I know what you're doing, she said, and it won't work. I didn't ask what she meant. I ended the call, then sat with the adrenaline of not folding, of hearing her anger and staying steady inside it, of saying no when the pressure was applied directly and specifically. My hands were shaking, but the no had stayed a no. That was new. That was different. And different was exactly what I needed to be. Noemi came to my apartment 2 days before the fundraiser. She had her phone in her hand, screen facing me as she came through the door, a text from Mom. I read it. If you side with your sister at the dinner, you'll become the burden too. Think carefully. Noemi's hands were trembling. She sent that this afternoon, she said. I've been sitting with it for hours. I sat with it too for a moment. Let it land properly. The label is a threat, written out, time-stamped. No ambiguity about what it meant or what it was designed to do. She told you explicitly, I said quietly. The blessing label isn't love. It's a position. It's conditional. You keep it by obeying. Noemi's eyes were filling. I don't want it, she said. Her voice was small but certain. I don't want to be her blessing anymore, not like this. I crossed the room and held my sister. We stood in my kitchen and shook together a little. Both of us, the specific shaking of people who'd been holding something very heavy for a very long time and were finally feeling the weight of setting it down. You don't have to carry her choices, I said. Neither do you, Noemi whispered back. We both understood what was coming, and we were going to face it together. The night before the fundraiser, I prepared the folder, printed my spreadsheet, the whole year. Dates, amounts, hours, tasks, everything documented from memory and receipt and screenshot. Printed the credit report pages showing the fraudulent accounts, opening dates, addresses, the pattern clear and undeniable when laid side by side. Printed the summary Ozzy had helped me prepare during our last meeting. Clean language, factual, no emotional editorializing. I laid everything on my kitchen table and looked at it. It wasn't a weapon. I needed to be clear about that with myself. I wasn't building this to destroy her. I was building it to stop being destroyed by her. The difference was important. I didn't want her humiliated. I wanted her to stop using me. The most effective way to make someone stop using you was to make the use visible. Not just to you, not just to your therapist or your friend, to the room. My hands shook as I slid the pages into the folder. I closed it, labeled the outside simply, set it on my bag where I would find it tomorrow, then sat with the quiet for a while, letting myself feel for the first time ready. Mom found me before the event officially started. She pulled me into a side hallway near the kitchen, voice low, eyes moving, the specific energy of someone making last-minute adjustments to a plan. Smile tonight, she said. Whatever you're feeling, keep it off your face. Don't embarrass me. I looked at her. You embarrassed me at Thanksgiving, I said quietly, in front of everyone. Her eyes flashed fast. Then she caught herself. You deserved it, she said. 2 words, plain and direct. Then instantly, seamlessly, her face shifted, softened. Her eyes went slightly glassy the way they did when emotion was the tool she needed. I've done everything for you, she said. Voice catching. Everything. I looked at her face, studied it the way I'd been studying it my whole life, looking for the real thing underneath the performance. I nodded once, not agreeing, not submitting, just marking the moment, because she just said you deserved it out loud, clear and honest, and then immediately tried to reframe with tears. I had the folder. I had the timeline. I had Noemi. My revenge wasn't yelling back. My revenge was letting her words collapse under the weight of what was actually true. Mom practiced her speech into the microphone an hour before guests arrived. I was straightening chairs at a table nearby, close enough to hear. She worked through it in sections, paused, adjusted her phrasing, said certain sentences twice to test how they landed. "I've been so blessed," she said, looking at an imaginary room, blessed in ways I don't take for granted. Her eyes moved to where Noemi was standing near the entrance. "And I've carried burdens," she added, eyes sliding toward where I was standing, with grace. With grace. The framing that turned exploitation into martyrdom. Noemi looked at me across the room. Her face was pale. I felt my heartbeat in my throat, loud and specific. Mom was planning to say it again, in this room, with a microphone, in front of community members and relatives and people who volunteered for causes she funded and trusted the image she'd built here. She was going to name me publicly. One more time. To one more audience. My hands were steady on the back of the chair I was straightening. My folder was in my bag on the table behind me. If she wanted a stage tonight, she was about to learn something she'd never had to learn before. Stages amplified everything, not just her version. The fundraiser night arrived fully. The community center filled with people. Relatives who'd been texting me all week. Neighbors who smiled at Mom when they came in. Community members who knew her name and trusted her warmth. The kind of crowd that made a person feel very powerful and very exposed if the conditions were right. I sat at a table near the front. Noemi beside me, rigid with something she was managing carefully. Mom stood near the podium, glowing under the lights, working the room the way she'd always worked rooms, touching arms, laughing, making people feel singled out and valued. She tapped the microphone to settle the room. The sound quieted everyone. Mom smiled, opened her arms slightly. "I want to begin by thanking my daughters," she said. The room turned toward Noemi and me. I felt the attention shift, felt every person in the room lean toward whatever she was about to say. My stomach tightened, not with fear, with readiness, because whatever came next, I was prepared for it in a way I had never been prepared before. The next sentence would either keep me where she'd always kept me, or it would be the last time she said it without consequence. Mom said it, voice sweet, perfectly timed. 2 daughters, 1 blessing, 1 burden. Awkward laughter rippled through the room. I stood up, calmly, without rushing, without anger visible anywhere on my face. The laughter stopped. Mom's smile froze. I didn't reach for the microphone. I didn't need it. The room was quiet enough. "I'm not a burden," I said clearly. "I'm just done being used." Complete silence. For years I've been covering bills, sorting paperwork, handling appointments, cleaning up situations quietly because I believed that was what love required. I looked at Noemi, then back at the room. Tonight I'm lifting that weight off myself. The silence felt enormous, alive. Mom's eyes flashed with something she couldn't fully contain. Not hurt. Panic. Because I wasn't crying. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't giving her the reaction she'd prepared a response for. I was naming the pattern. Calmly, in front of witnesses, without a single tremor in my voice, and that was something she had never had to manage before. She knew how to handle my emotion. She had no script for my clarity. I reached into my bag, picked up the folder. Mom laughed into the microphone. Too loud, too high. "Here we go," she said, trying to turn the room back toward her, trying to reframe what had just happened as a scene she'd predicted, something she was calmly enduring. I walked to the front table. A community elder sat there. Someone Mom had mentioned by name as a respected figure in the neighborhood. Someone she would have wanted to impress tonight. I placed 1 printed page in front of her. "This is a ledger," I said quietly. "What I've contributed over the past year, with dates." I laid a 2nd page beside the first. "And these are accounts opened in my name, at my mother's address, without my knowledge." A gasp moved through the nearest tables. Noemi stood up. Her voice was shaking, but it was clear. "It's true," she said. "And last week she told me in writing that I would become the burden too if I didn't do what she wanted." The room shifted, the way a room shifted when people were revising something they'd believed. Mom's voice cracked, high and sharp. "You're doing this to hurt me." I shook my head once. "No," I said. The sentence was steady and final. "I'm doing this to stop hurting myself." The words landed like a door closing, quietly, permanently. I didn't stay for the argument. I said what I needed to say. Clearly, calmly, with the folder as my foundation. Then I said 3 more sentences. I'm moving next month. I've arranged care support for my grandfather that doesn't depend on guilt, and I won't be funding or managing anything that requires me to be shamed for it. Mom looked around the room, searching for the faces that usually rearranged themselves toward her when she needed them. They weren't rearranging. They were still, quiet, processing. Naomi took my hand. We walked out together, slow, steady, side by side. Behind us, Mom's voice rose, trying to recover, trying to spin. But the room had the pages. The room had heard Noemi. The room had heard me. And that couldn't be unheard. In the weeks after, Mom tried her cycle. Anger first, then silence, then tearful messages about how she'd been humiliated. Then something that looked like an apology until you read it closely and found it was actually an accusation wearing apologetic punctuation. None of it landed the same way, because I was no longer available for the role. I built a life where love wasn't a transaction, where family wasn't a performance requiring a prop, where my worth didn't depend on how much weight I could absorb for someone else. The moment I stopped being her burden, for the first time in my adult life, I felt light.